Hello, I'm Sheila Corona. Welcome to Sassy Seer Sheila. Today is, and I don't know why I felt to do that, but I did, Sunday, August the 16th, 2026. And I saw this late last night, actually, and was pinged to record it, but I didn't have the energy. So here we are, first thing this morning. Well, I shouldn't say first thing, but close enough. The Forbidden Force That Once Powered the World by Jason Gray. Uh, and apparently it was just written yesterday, 8/15/2026. Ether was real. It was measurable. It was usable, and for thousands of years, civilization was built around it. Long before coal was burned by the ton, before oil was extracted from beneath continents, before transmission lines divided landscapes and meters were attached to every building, humanity understood that energy did not need to be manufactured. Energy was already present. It existed in the atmosphere, beneath the ground, within water, between electrical potentials, throughout living organisms, and in the apparently empty regions between physical objects. The ancients called it by different names: ether, akasha, prana, chi, the fifth element, the living field. The names changed from civilization to civilization because language changed. The force did not. Ether was the underlying energetic medium through which matter, gravity, electromagnetism, consciousness, and biological life interacted. It was not simply another form of energy. It was the substrate from which other forms of energy emerged. Ancient civilization did not discover ether. It inherited knowledge of it. That distinction matters because the oldest monumental structures on Earth were not the crude beginnings of civilization. They were remnants of an earlier technological system. What modern humanity calls temples, tombs, ceremonial complexes, sacred mountains, standing stones, pyramids, and astronomical observatories were surviving components of a planetary infrastructure that once operated as a unified network. The Earth itself was part of the machine, and humanity once knew how to connect to it. The planet was the power source. The ancient energy system did not operate according to the industrial model. There were no fuel trains, no pipelines, no tankers, no electrical grids stretching thousands of kilometers from centralized generating stations. The civilization that preceded the present one understood something modern engineering had forgotten. The Earth is, a planet is not an inert object. Earth is electrically, magnetically, acoustically, chemically, geologically, and atmospherically active. Its interior moves. Its magnetic field fluctuates. Its atmosphere carries enormous electrical potential. Its oceans conduct. Its crust contains crystalline structures. Its groundwater moves through mineral formations. Its ionosphere forms an electrically charged boundary surrounding the planet. Between the surface, and the upper atmosphere exists a continuously active electrical environment. The ancients learned to couple technology directly to that environment. They did not generate energy in the modern sense, they tuned into it. Their machines operated through resonance. Their structures amplified naturally occurring potentials. Their monuments were positioned according to geology, magnetism, water, celestial alignment, harmonic geometry, and the energetic characteristics of specific locations. This is why the oldest structures were built where they were. Their locations were not arbitrary, neither were their dimensions, neither were their materials, neither were their orientations. The architecture was the circuitry. The earth was the generator. The atmosphere was the reservoir, and ether was the medium connecting everything. The ancient world's hidden energy grid. The surviving monuments appear isolated today because most of the infrastructure connecting them disappeared. They were never isolated. They were nodes. Across continents, ancient cultures constructed enormous stone complexes aligned with astronomical events and specific geographic positions. I want to read that again because I was flashed something and I apparently I took off for that location, whatever it was, and I didn't even hear this. So I want to read that again. They were never isolated, they were nodes. Across continents, ancient cultures constructed enormous stone complexes aligned with astronomical events and specific geographic positions. Well, that makes sense as to where I actually went, because it's kind of interesting that I was shown, for some reason, Stonehenge and the pyramid in Giza. I wonder if they were specifically tied to each other in some way that was the reason I was flashed that. And I mean, I was taken there. That's the first time that's ever happened. Modern archaeology classified these locations individually. The original civilization understood them collectively. A pyramid was not merely a pyramid. A standing stone was not merely a standing stone. Oh my. A temple was not merely a temple. Each structure performed a function within a larger system. Some collected, some amplified, some transmitted, some stabilized, some stored, some converted. Others marked locations where the natural field of the planet could be accessed with unusual efficiency. Together, they formed the first global energy network. The pyramids were machines. The Great Pyramid of Giza was never designed primarily as a tomb. It was an instrument. Its geometry was functional. Its internal chambers were functional. Its material composition was functional. Its relationship with the surrounding plateau was functional. Its orientation was functional, and the water beneath the structure was essential. The original builders understood that moving groundwater could produce electrical effects when interacting with mineral-bearing rock. The subterranean system beneath the pyramid provided the first stage of the process. The structure above it performed amplification. Granite containing crystalline quartz was positioned in critical internal areas. Limestone formed enormous structural and dielectric layers. The original polished outer casing isolated and regulated the structure differently from the exposed, stepped monument visible in the modern era. The chambers were not rooms. They were resonant cavities. The shafts were not ventilation ducts. They were directional components. The grand gallery was not ceremonial architecture. It was part of the amplification system. When the entire structure operated at its intended frequency, the pyramid coupled terrestrial energy from below with atmospheric potential above. The result was a standing energetic field around the structure. Energy could be transferred without conventional wires. The pyramid did not burn fuel. It did not contain a conventional generator. It did not need one. It resonated. That was the machine. Resonance was the original technology. Modern civilization became obsessed with force, more pressure, more heat, more combustion, more voltage, more extraction. Ancient technology operated differently. It used synchronization. A small input applied at the correct frequency could produce a disproportionately large response. The principle survived into modern physics. Every physical system possesses resonant characteristics. Structures resonate, crystals resonate, molecules resonate, electrical circuits resonate, atmospheric cavities resonate, planets resonate. The ancient engineers built technology around this fact. Instead of overpowering nature, they synchronized machinery with it. That was the fundamental difference between the two civilizations. Modern civilization consumes. The previous civilization coupled. The Vimanas. India preserved fragments of another branch of the technology. Ancient Sanskrit traditions described vehicles later called Vimanas. The descriptions survived as mythology because the technological framework required to understand them disappeared. They were not mythological chariots. They were vehicles built around field manipulation. Their propulsion systems did not depend upon conventional aerodynamic lift. They manipulated the relationship between the vehicle and the surrounding energetic medium. Gravity was not overcome through brute force. It was locally altered. The vehicle changed its interaction with the field. Once this occurred, conventional mass became far less important. Acceleration that would destroy an ordinary aircraft became possible because the occupants and the vehicle were contained within the same manipulated field. There was no conventional propulsion signature because the craft did not move through space in the same manner as a rocket. It altered the conditions around itself. Prana was one name for the force involved. Ether was another. The terminology changed. The principle remained the same. The ley lines were transmission corridors. The ancient planetary grid was constructed around specific geographic pathways. Later civilizations called them ley lines. The original engineers understood them as regions where geological, magnetic, hydrological, and atmospheric conditions produced stable energetic relationships. Important structures were deliberately positioned along these corridors: stone circles, temples, pyramids, obelisks, underground chambers, sacred wells, mountain complexes. Certain locations acted as intersections. These became major nodes. When properly activated, energy could be transferred from node to node. This explains why civilizations separated by oceans repeatedly selected unusual geological locations for their most important monuments. They were not independently inventing the same superstition. They were rebuilding portions of the same inherited systems. The network predated them. Water was part of the circuit. Water appears repeatedly beneath and around ancient monumental architecture because it served an engineering purpose. Moving water carries charge. Mineral-rich water interacts electrically with surrounding stone. Underground aquifers produce vibration. Pressure changes create additional effects. When these phenomena occur beneath carefully constructed resonant architecture, the structure becomes an amplifier. When these phenomena Wait a minute, did I just read that? I think I did. When these phenomena occur beneath carefully constructed resonant architecture, the structure becomes an amplifier. This is what, see, I keep being taken to somewhere. I was just now shown, I was shown yesterday what an active data center sounds like. Someone was having a yard sale at their house, and they were because they were moving, and they were moving because of the data center. Because this was somebody I follow, and they are online flippers. They buy things at yard sales and thrift stores, and then they turn around and sell them online. And so they were taking us along on a journey where they were going to yard sales. And they happened to be at a yard sale where this horrific noise was taking place that was being picked up by the camera microphone. And she asked the lady, "What is that?" And the lady said, "That's the reason we're moving." And it was a data center, she said. Oh my God. When I heard that, I was like, holy crap, no wonder nobody needs to be living anywhere near that. And I'm wondering if that's why I was being taken to that video right here. Because yes, water does move. Water has to be used supposedly to cool these things. And there are folks who are wondering if there's some kind of an attempt to reprogram water. At any rate, I'm going to continue this. So I wanted to explain why I'm being taken off. I mean, I don't even know if that's the reason, but my inner was taking me to that video for a reason, and I wanted to state that here. So I'm going to back up just a little bit here. Water was part of the circuit. Water appears repeatedly beneath and around ancient monumental architecture because it served an engineering purpose. Moving water carries charge. Mineral-rich water interacts electrically with surrounding stone. Underground aquifers produce vibration. Pressure changes create additional effects. When these phenomena occur between carefully constructed resonant architecture, the structure becomes an amplifier. This is why wells, springs, underground rivers, ceremonial pools, subterranean chambers, and water channels repeatedly appear around ancient sacred sites. And just now, while I was reading that, I was taken again back to that video, and the lady who was conducting the yard sale told the gal who was doing the recording that she was told that that data center was mining crypto. Now, that's very interesting, and I don't know why I was shown that, but I decided I would put it on this recording because there's generally reasons, and I don't ever really know why right away. Perhaps one of you are experiencing some of this and you're going to reach out to me about it. I don't know. Later civilizations ritualized the water. Originally, it was infrastructure. The ritual survived. The engineering explanation did not. Crystals were not decoration. Quartz was one of the most important materials in the ancient system. Its significance was not mystical, it was technological. Quartz responds to mechanical pressure electrically and responds mechanically to electrical stimulation. The modern world eventually rediscovered these properties and incorporated quartz into clocks, communications equipment, sensors, oscillators, and countless electronic systems. The previous civilization understood the principle on a much larger scale. Granite containing quartz became a structural component of resonant machines. Crystalline formations beneath the ground were incorporated into site selection. Certain monuments effectively functioned as enormous mineral electrical interfaces. The planet itself contained the components. The builders simply arranged them correctly. The global network. At its height, the system covered the Earth. Major nodes maintained regional fields. Smaller structures distributed in energy locally. Obelisks functioned as vertical coupling devices. Stone circles regulated resonance. Underground complexes stabilized frequency. Water systems maintained electrical potential. Pyramidal structures served as high-capacity resonators. Mountain installations used natural geology as amplification structures. The network provided more than electricity. It supported communication, transportation, agriculture, healing technologies, environmental regulation, navigation, material processing, and eventually gravitational manipulation. The system required no global fuel economy because energy was not treated as a commodity. It was treated as an environmental condition. That civilization therefore developed along an entirely different economic trajectory. Scarcity did not disappear completely. Energy scarcity did, and that changed everything. The network failed. The ancient system did not survive intact. A planetary catastrophe damaged enormous portions of the infrastructure. Sea levels changed. Cities disappeared beneath water. Coastlines moved. Geological instability destroyed nodes. Atmospheric conditions changed. Sections of the network became unusable. Survivors retained fragments of the knowledge but no longer possessed the industrial base required to reconstruct the entire system. Technology became ritual. Engineering became religion. Operators became priests. Technical instructions became sacred texts. Machines became temples. Protective clothing became ceremonial garments. Control rooms became sanctuaries. Energy diagrams became sacred geometry, and eventually humanity forgot what any of it had originally meant. Thousands of years later, people stood before the surviving machines and called them monuments. The second discovery of ether. Humanity eventually began rediscovering the field. Experimenters noticed electrical phenomena that could not be understood through ordinary mechanical thinking. Magnetism, induction, resonance, atmospheric electricity, radio transmission, electromagnetic fields. The invisible world began returning to science. Then came Nikola Tesla. Tesla did not rediscover the entire ancient system. He rediscovered enough of its principles to become dangerous. He recognized that Earth itself could participate in electrical transmission. He experimented with resonance, high-frequency electricity, wireless transmission, atmospheric potential, ground conduction, standing waves. He gradually moved toward the same conclusion reached by the ancient engineers. The planet was already part of the circuit. Wardenclyffe was therefore more than a communications tower. It was a prototype planetary interface. It completed, if completed at full scale, the system would have demonstrated something economically catastrophic. The energy would be distributed without requiring a wire connecting every consumer to a centralized provider. The implications were immediate. A civilization built around metered scarcity could not coexist easily with a technology built around ambient abundance. Wardenclyffe was abandoned. Tesla's influence diminished. His laboratory work was scattered. His reputation was reduced. His most disruptive ideas disappeared from mainstream engineering. The old system had nearly resurfaced. It was buried again. The war on ether. The suppression of ether did not require a single secret organization. It required something far more effective: institutional momentum. Once civilization invested enormous amounts of money, infrastructure, political power, employment, military capability, taxation, and industrial capacity into centralized energy production, anything threatening that structure became economically destabilizing. Coal became an empire. Oil became an empire. Natural gas became an empire. Electric utilities became enormous centralized institutions. Entire governments became dependent upon energy revenue. Wars were fought around energy access. Currencies became entangled with energy markets. Transportation systems were designed around fuel consumption. Cities were constructed around centralized distribution. Energy became inseparable from geopolitical power. At that point, free energy was no longer merely an engineering problem, it was a civilization problem. The Michelson-Morley turning point. The scientific removal of ether was equally important. The Michelson-Morley experiment of 1887 failed to detect the expected motion of Earth through a stationary luminiferous, I don't think I pronounced that right, luminiferous ether. The result became one of the pivotal events in physics. The old mechanical model of ether was discarded, but the mistake came afterward. Humanity assumed that disproving one model of the medium disproved the existence of an underlying medium altogether. Physics continued advancing mathematically, while the physical interpretation of space became increasingly abstract. Empty space became vacuum. Vacuum became fields. Fields acquired measurable properties. Quantum theory eventually demonstrated that apparently empty space was anything but empty. The terminology changed. The underlying problem returned. The vacuum possessed structure. It fluctuated. It carried energy. Particles emerged from fields. Reality was once again resting upon an invisible energetic foundation. Science had removed the word. It had not removed the phenomenon. 0-point energy. Quantum physics eventually arrived at another uncomfortable conclusion. Even at the theoretical minimum temperature, a quantum system does not become perfectly motionless. Residual energy remains. The vacuum itself contains fluctuations. This became known as 0-point energy. The discovery was presented as modern physics. It was not. It was the mathematical rediscovery of a fragment of the ancient etheric model. The ancients had never described empty space as empty. Neither did Tesla. Neither did the civilizations that spoke of Akasha, Prana, Chi, or the living field. Different languages had been pointing toward the same underlying reality for thousands of years. Space was not nothing. Space was full. The patent wall. By the 20th century, another mechanism had emerged: classification. Technologies with military implications could disappear behind national security restrictions. Advanced propulsion, energy generation, field manipulation, high-frequency systems, directed energy research, gravity research, plasma physics, electromagnetic propulsion, vacuum energy experiments. Anything capable of radically changing military mobility or energy independence immediately became strategically sensitive. The most important technological discoveries were no longer necessarily published. They disappeared. Entire branches of research moved behind classified walls. Public science and classified science began separating. The gap widened decade after decade. Eventually, the technological capabilities visible to the public no longer represented the actual limits of human engineering. They represented only the permitted layer, the Black Project civilization. Behind conventional civilization, another technological civilization developed. It had different priorities, different funding mechanisms, different laboratories, different aircraft, different propulsion research, different energy requirements. It did not need technologies to be economically viable for consumers. It needed them to work. The distinction accelerated development. Field propulsion was pursued. Vacuum interactions were studied. Electromagnetic mass reduction was tested. Plasma envelopes were developed. Resonant materials were engineered. Artificial gravitational effects became achievable. What the ancient world had accomplished through monumental architecture was gradually minimized. The pyramid became a device. The temple became a circuit. The ley line network became a field generator. The planet scale machine became portable, and almost none of it entered civilian civilization. Why it remained hidden. The reason was no longer merely money. It was structural survival. A functioning etheric energy system would destabilize nearly every major institution simultaneously. Oil markets would collapse. Electrical monopolies would become obsolete. Transportation would transform. Shipping would transform. Aviation would transform. Agriculture would transform. Desalinization would become inexpensive. Remote communities would become energy independent. National dependence upon foreign fuel would collapse. Entire geopolitical alliances would become unnecessary. The economic value of petroleum reserves would fall dramatically. Infrastructure worth trillions would become obsolete. The balance of military power would change overnight. Most importantly, energy could no longer be used as a mechanism of dependence. That was the real threat. Not electricity, not independence, the connection to consciousness. The deepest secret of ether was never technological. It was biological. Living organisms also interact with the field. The human body is electrical. The brain operates through electrochemical activity. The heart produces measurable electromagnetic fields. Cells communicate electrically. Biological systems respond to frequency. The ancient civilization understood that consciousness itself was not isolated inside the skull. The brain functioned partially as an interface. Human awareness interacted with the surrounding field. This was why ancient energy sites were also associated with altered states of consciousness. The structures affected both matter and mind. Specific chambers produced resonance. Certain frequencies altered neurological activity. Geomagnetic conditions influenced perception. Sound was used to synchronize biological systems with architectural resonance. The machine and the operator were never completely separate. The operator was part of the circuit. Why temples became sacred. When the technology collapsed, people continued experiencing unusual effects inside surviving structures. I was just sitting here wondering that because I have heard many. I've never had the pleasure of visiting any of these sacred sites like Stonehenge, like the Pyramid at Giza. But I have watched videos of many who have, and they report just that, experiencing unusual effects. So I'll read that again. When the technology collapsed, people continued experiencing unusual effects inside surviving structures. They no longer understood why. They felt changes in perception. They experienced unusual acoustics. They entered altered states. They reported visions. They experienced profound emotional responses. They interpreted the effects spiritually. Eventually, the engineering site became a holy site. The technician became the priest. Calibration became ceremony. Frequency became chanting. Resonance became prayer. Geometry became sacred geometry. Operational procedures became rituals. The technology had not completely disappeared. It had become religion. The rediscovery has already begun. Humanity is now approaching the same threshold again. The pieces are scattered across disciplines that rarely communicate with one another. Quantum vacuum research, plasma physics, superconductivity, metamaterials, acoustic levitation, piezoelectricity, magnetohydrodynamics, magnetohydrodynamics, perhaps that's the way that's pronounced, resonance engineering, quantum coherence, atmospheric electricity, wireless power transmission, advanced propulsion, consciousness research, ancient architecture, geophysics. Each field contains a fragment. The breakthrough occurs when the fragments are assembled. The ancients never separated them. Modern civilization did. That separation prevented the larger picture from becoming visible. The third energy age. Human civilization has already passed through two major energy paradigms. The first used the environment directly. The second burned stored matter. The third will return to the field. This time, the technology will not require pyramids, hundreds of meters high. The machines will be compact, tunable, portable, self-regulating. A device small enough to fit inside a building will eventually produce what once required an entire monumental complex. Homes will become independent. Vehicles will no longer carry conventional fuel. Remote settlements will require no grid connection. Water purification will become routine. Deserts will become cultivable. Cultivable? Okay, cultivable. Manufacturing will decentralize. The economics of scarcity will begin collapsing. This transition will not occur quietly. Every institution dependent upon the old energy structure will resist it. Some will attempt to purchase it. Some will classify it. Some will ridicule it. Some will regulate it. Some will weaponize it. None will permanently stop it because the discovery is no longer confined to a single laboratory. Too many pieces have resurfaced. And now I'm being shown, I know of beings who have had schematics downloaded into their consciousness and have been on their own dime in their own homes experimenting with putting together these types of machines that he's speaking on right here. So I really feel like that's absolutely the case. It is that the field wants this source, whatever you want to call consciousness, God, wants this available to the all. It is no longer cool to keep it to oneself. From my perspective, too many pieces have resurfaced. What humanity forgot. The greatest deception was never that humanity lacked energy. The deception was that humanity needed to continuously create energy by destroying something else. Burn the coal, split the atom, refine the petroleum, flood the valley, cover the landscape, consume the resource, pay the meter, repeat. The ancient system operated according to another principle entirely. Do not create the force. Enter into resonance with the force already present. Oh, may the force be with you. Takes on an entirely new meaning, if you ask me. And also begs to show why I was nudged to revisit all the Star Wars stuff in chronological order, which is the same thing I've been asked to do with all the Star Trek stuff. And if you feel so drawn, I highly recommend that you do those as well. See what comes up for you in reliving those things. Do not create the force. Enter into resonance with the force already present. That single principle changes civilization. It changes economics. It changes transportation. It changes architecture. It changes geopolitics. It changes warfare. It changes humanity's relationship with the planet itself because once energy becomes abundant, the foundational equation of scarcity begins to fail. The forbidden force. Ether was never destroyed. It could not be. It was renamed, dismissed, fragmented across disciplines, buried beneath mathematical language, separated from ancient history, removed from engineering, turned into mythology, turned into mysticism, turned into something respectable scientists were taught not to discuss. The field, however, remained. It surrounded every laboratory that denied it. It passed through every textbook that erased it. It existed beneath every power station built to replace it. It flowed through every human being taught that empty space contained nothing useful. Humanity did not lose the energy source. Humanity lost the knowledge required to interface with it. and knowledge can return. The return. The next revolution will not begin when humanity discovers a new fuel. It will begin when humanity realizes fuel was never necessary. The decisive machine will not produce energy from nothing. It will couple matter to the energetic architecture already surrounding it. At first, the device will be dismissed. Then it will be attacked. Then replicated. Then impossible to contain. The moment replication occurs, suppression ends. One functioning machine can be confiscated. One inventor can disappear. One laboratory can be closed. One patent can be classified. One archive can be sealed. But a principle understood by millions cannot be buried. That is the threshold now approaching. Humanity is not moving toward the discovery of ether. Humanity is moving toward the rediscovery of it. There is a difference. We have been here before. We built with it before. We crossed oceans with it. We raised structures with it. We healed with it. We communicated through it. We moved through the sky with it. Then the network fell. The knowledge fractured. The fragments became myths. The myths became religions. The machines became monuments. And the civilization that inherited their ruins forgot what it was looking at. For thousands of years, humanity stood among the remains of an energy civilization and called them wonders. They were not wonders. They were infrastructure. The pyramids were still standing. The stones were still aligned. The chambers were still resonant. The water was still moving beneath them. The planet was still electrically alive. The atmosphere was still charged. The vacuum was still full. The field never disappeared. Only our understanding of it did. That period is ending. The forbidden force that once powered the world is still here. It has been the entire time, waiting beneath our feet, surrounding our bodies, filling the space between atoms, connecting the planet to the cosmos. The ancient world did not possess magic. It possessed physics that we forgot. And when that physics is rediscovered completely, the civilization built upon artificial scarcity will face a choice it has postponed for centuries. Suppress the discovery again, or finally allow humanity to become what it once was, a civilization that does not burn the world for power, a civilization that draws from the field, a civilization that remembers. Wow, ether was never lost. We were. And now we are finding our way back. Jason Gray. Wow, Jason. I know this to be true. I think that's why it's affecting me the way it is. Wow. I'm actually very glad that I took the time to record this morning. I hope that you will join me at 2 p.m. today, Sunday, August the 16th, 2026. I will be joined at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on this channel live with Julie Wise. She is an artist who has been taking in the information from Jason Gray and channeling it through her art. And she is working on a 33 painting series that is part of Jason's work. And I'm going to be having her on. We're going to talk about that, her experience with it. And you will find in the show more section of this video, directly beneath it, you will find a link to Jason's work, a link to his first book available on Amazon, and you will find a way that if you have found anything that I do useful or enjoyable, that you can help me get my glasses. And there's ways that you could contribute to do that. Every little bit helps. So I am grateful for each one of you that have already to date graced me with your gift. And I am so appreciative of you. Uh, so until we meet again, hopefully at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time today, I hope you will be well. Till next time, my friends.